But first, we're now joined by Irish tech innovator Paul Biggar. Paul is the founder and CEO of Darklang, a next-generation developer tool. He was also the founder of 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and he's with us today to talk about the role that big tech is playing in Israel's genocide. Paul, it's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's have you begin by talking about the world you've worked in for so long, the tech world, and what you're seeing in terms of how it is engaged right now with the genocide and why you're speaking out.
Tech it's an interesting place. There's a lot of people who come in with the idea that they want to make the world a better place, and the way that they do that is it tends to be a little bit odd. It tends to be a little bit in service of existing power structures. And one of those existing power structures is venture capital. And venture capital from the October 7th attack has been extremely pro-Israel and has been extremely active at spreading misinformation that is intended to take our eyes away from what's happening in Gaza. And that was basically the reason that I felt I had to speak up.
Paul, just for our viewers who aren't as familiar with the world of tech as you are, what is venture capital? What role does it play? And you wrote a very powerful piece called "I Can't Sleep" on your blog. And just that first sentence is so powerful, where you say how, as all of us have been since October 7th, we cannot escape the horrifying images of Palestinian mothers, fathers' bodies being torn apart. And then you wake up the next day and you are going into meetings with all these tech people, and it's all very banal. A lot of us deal with that incongruity in our daily lives. You're dealing with a world where huge amounts of money are involved, and people like you who have good ideas, who are starting companies, need to get investors. These are the venture capitalists, as I understand. What's that like now? Who are these venture capitalists? And I'm assuming they're all very pro-Palestinian, right?
Yes. Oh, overwhelmingly. So the life cycle of a company is a founder, often very young, often technical, will start a company with an idea and a very small amount of capital, maybe some savings, maybe something from family, and they'll build some ideas, and they'll build a demo, and they'll show it to people, and they'll start to get customers, and from there they have the opportunity to raise capital. And every large tech company you've heard of has raised capital, in many cases hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars. But they raise it in progressive steps. So your first step today might be to raise $1.5 million. And that might be from angel investors, which is wealthy individuals who are probably the most sympathetic of the group to Palestine, but still not super sympathetic in the overall case, I'd say. But then from there, you start to move to institutional investors, and these are companies like Sequoia Capital, or one of the companies I called out, Redpoint. These are companies that have hundreds of millions of dollars and that are able to write much bigger checks. And you need those checks because the way that tech works is you build with capital in advance of getting revenue. So that means that you hire people and you hire a much bigger team than you can really afford. And you do that with the capital that are given from these investors. And these investors tend to be professional companies that themselves raise money from larger investors. And those investors often are things like universities, pension funds. And they give those money to general partners at these investment funds like Sequoia. And then they write checks of $5 million, $10 million, $50 million in the companies. And the thing is, you need to know where your money is coming from next year. If you write off those investors, if you say, I'm no longer going to work with these people, or if you piss these people off, then they may not give you money next year. And then you might have to shut your company down. You might have to do a huge layoff. You might, let down your hundreds of staff who are working in your company who now need to get new jobs. And right now that's not a great environment. But also you throw away, in some cases, 5 to 10 years of your life's work. And also, your personal and your family's opportunity at wealth. All of those, are at risk from founders who speak up. For founders who speak up.
And have you seen that? Can you say I've actually seen this happening, or are we talking about a theoretical risk here?
Since I put out my blog post, I have dozens of emails, DMs, even LinkedIn in-mails from people telling me how my post spoke to them. It said the things that they wanted to say, and they felt that they could not say it. With friends and people I've known in tech for a long time, many of them are saying the same thing. I was speaking to one in October. This is someone who is, tall white man, well established in tech, very successful, very well known, and he was saying, if I speak up, I risk everything I have.
But Paul, you're also a founder, and you presumably need to raise money. Are you not worried about this as well? I mean, what's a little thing like genocide between friends?
Yeah, I am worried about it. I think that relative to most people in tech, I have it really good. My previous company, which I'm no longer a part of, was successful, and I was able to take some money off the table, so my family will not starve. The company that I'm working on at the moment is already doing pretty badly. So, we've been going for 7 years and have not hit success yet, and I'm sure we will someday. But, there's very little to threaten to threaten me personally in that sense. And also, the board of my company, the people who decide whether I continue to have my job, I control that. And that's not true of an awful lot. I would say the vast majority of tech companies out there, usually their board is controlled by investors and by people who have a vested interest in the financial success of the company and really do not give a single fuck about genocide.
Paul, I wanted to ask you about a piece that was published earlier this month by journalists Li Fang and Jack Poulson about how the tech world is helping Israel shape online discourse. There's one U.S.-Israeli investment fund called J Ventures that seems to have a large hand in all of this. Can you talk about this and the significance of these kinds of tools that Silicon Valley companies are using right now?
Yeah. So I think a large part of the narrative is the cancellation of Paddy Cosgrave. So Paddy Cosgrave was the CEO of Web Summit, an extraordinarily successful company, which was the go-to place for investors and startups and the entire tech industry to congregate. It was originally in Dublin, it moved to Lisbon, and now there's a series of different conferences around the world. And he spoke up and he said a very simple thing. He said, war crimes are, and I'm paraphrasing here, war crimes are bad, even when they're committed by our allies. And he was instantly cancelled. And this article by Li Fang and Jack Poulson told the story of how that actually happened. It happened in a WhatsApp group where Israeli and Israeli sympathetic investors such as J Ventures, it was run by J Ventures, but also Bessemer Capital, which is a big name in tech, and a number of their partners, in particular Adam Fisher and 𝐓𝐡𝐞, I'm not sure of his second name, were instrumental in getting Paddy cancelled. And it took one day. He went from being the CEO of his company to posting an apology on Twitter and saying that he was going to reflect on it in one day. And this is how it happened. And that set a a sphere of silence over San Francisco, over tech. People were, this was cited when I talked to people of like, are they going to do anything? Are they going to say anything? Everyone was like, look at what they did to Paddy. Look how quickly they were able to cancel him. And the way that they were able to cancel him was not just, his board, but it was contacts like Intel and Stripe pulled their speakers out of speaking at his conference. So there was a threat of the conference that was like 2 weeks away from being killed. And so massive internal pressure that he faced. And now he's suing Bessemer for their role in this. And the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿 article that came out was a big step for everyone to realize that actually this is a huge disinformation campaign that is intended to keep our eyes off of what's happening in Gaza and to prevent people from speaking up.
Paul, just to be clear, Paddy Cosgrave, the head of the Web Summit, who was cancelled, he didn't say Hamas is great. He didn't say I support murdering Jews. He didn't say he wants to wipe Israel off the map. What he said, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that war crimes are bad no matter who commits them.
That is exactly it. It was the most, I would have considered the most middle of the road, milquetoast statements that you could imagine.
And that wasn't acceptable. Now, in that article by 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and Jack Paulson, they describe, you said that this was organized in a WhatsApp group. That makes it sound, we've all got WhatsApp groups and, with friends and family or whatever, but this is a very high power WhatsApp group that they describe in the article and that they got lots of the chat logs from. So it's all fully documented by them. It includes major venture capitalists, some of these huge firms with hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that you talked about. And what it describes as well is that this group also includes or gets briefings from people from the Israeli Foreign Ministry, people from the Israeli military, and even that members of this group are using the group for one thing to organize campaigns to harass people online and get them fired, just as what happened with Paddy Cosgrave, but also, and this was incredible to me, to fundraise and purchase military equipment to send to the Israeli army. And these are tech bosses and tech CEOs and investors and so on. Is that something you'd ever come across before? Or did that surprise you when you saw it?
I think it did. One of my investors, Matt Ocko, put $100,000 and matching to give money to humanitarian services on the ground. But you can see when it actually happens that it involves giving money to the IDF. It is frankly shocking to me the overlap between the involvement of the IDF. These are one of the things that you see most in the tech industry, and one of the sort of touch points over the years has been free speech, and in particular the exact same investors who talk so much about free speech are ones who are silencing, are creating the inability of people to speak up, while at the same time they are supporting the IDF directly.
And Paul, if I could ask also, this is something that is generally promoted by Israel, that Israel is the so-called startup nation. This is a campaign that's been going on for years, and that Israeli companies are very big and prominent in tech, and also that there are a lot of Israeli tech workers in the United States and around the world. And now in Ireland, which is where you're from, there was a recent report about a significant number of visas being given to Israeli tech workers. Of course, we can't generalize about all Israeli tech workers. Some of them may have very good views or may even be against this genocide. We don't know. But in a general sense, how do you see that Israeli presence in the tech world playing out in terms of that suppression of speech, or does it? I mean, is that a factor at all?
Yeah, let me give you one example of a group chat that I was in. So this is a group chat of the venture firm Boldstart. They're a New York-based firm, and they invest in enterprise tech, and they usually write the first check. So they write $250,000 checks to $1 million to relatively new companies. And the group chat is it's usually founders of their portfolio companies, so people that they've invested in. And they put out statements in support of Israel right into November. And every one of those was, it's in Slack. They were hearted. There were people saying, "Thank you so much for your support of Israel." One of the founders, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞, was posting on Twitter throughout this time of their unrelenting support for Israel. And this was long into where we can already see the genocide had become. There was in November 10,000, maybe it was 5,000. I'm not sure of the actual numbers at this point. And I left that group when I posted my blog post, and I said, "Here, listen, I'm going to leave this group. Here are the reasons why I'm out." And I was sent screenshots of the conversation after I left, and it was people saying, "We continue to support Israel." This, December 15th, we're talking about, right? 20,000 dead. "We continue to support Israel. Thank you for your support of Israel. Poor Paul, he's so sad and deluded. We support him in his convictions, blah, blah, blah." It was extremely pro-Israel and continued to be. And I honestly can't see how any Palestinian or honestly Arab founders would want to work with these people. And that's what they've been telling me in emails and DMs.
Paul, while this is happening, there was just a couple days ago, the Times of Israel reported that, quote, "a delegation of 65 investors, CEOs, and senior executives of US-based technology, venture capital, and private equity firms it will be arriving in a show of, quote, solidarity and to hold meetings." And the CEO of meetup.com, David Siegel, said that after October 7th, we feel it is critical for venture capital and technology business leaders to stand with Israel. That means more than donating, but also being present to say that we have always been and will always be there to support Israel's flourishing tech ecosystem. We will invest and continue to stand with the, quote, startup nation. And Siegel said that the trip was oversubscribed for attendees. The technology community recognizes the heightened need for support as many Israeli entrepreneurs and their workforces are on the front lines as reservists. At the same time, here in the Bay Area, where I'm based, there have been protests by Google and Amazon workers and members of the community to try and get these big tech companies to stop contracting with the Israeli military. Where do you see this going, and what's the significance of both the, these like sustained protests against these tech companies, but then, these venture capitalists going on, propaganda tours to the, quote, startup nation?
Yeah, so there's a desperate need for Israel and for Israeli supporters of Israel to keep the narrative at supporting Israel, and you can see this in investors, talking continually about anti-Semitism on at Harvard, that sort of thing. The tech mission to Israel is, to me, just part of the exact same movement. I've seen the agenda. I've seen the people who are on that list. There'll be an article coming out in The Intercept maybe today that has that list. And they're meeting with the IDF. They're meeting with President Herzog on Thursday, I think. This is like deeply embedded in the Israeli military, and the machine that keeps the genocide going. And it's very deliberate. The focus of the investors and the related pro-Israeli people on the trip, often CEOs and powerful people in tech, is to keep our eyes off it and to keep us to stop talking about what is actually happening, because it allows them to, or it allows Israel to keep doing what it's doing. And the unfortunate thing is that these investors and tech executives are very powerful. They have the ability to shape a lot of the conversation. A lot of them were involved in shaping the conversation about talking about anti-Semitism on campuses, and all of it. And some of them will admit it and say it out loud. Max Altman, who's the brother of Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, was saying, good job on Sam on being on the front page of New York Times to take conversation away from what's happening in Israel.
Paul, you have talked about the silencing effect within the world of tech, effectively censorship. And the Li Fang article and Jack Paulson article we talked about actually goes into the nitty-gritty of how the people, the powerful people in this WhatsApp group are organizing micro-level campaigns to harass prominent people online if they dare to speak out, or to basically intimidate them into silence. That's within the world of tech, and that's very significant given the impact of tech. But just to give you an example, something we struggle with on this live stream, we're a news program, we're a news outlet. Everyone can see what we do. But at the same time, we've had one episode of this live stream taken down by YouTube without any explanation or opportunity, any real opportunity to appeal it. And we've had another video taken down. It wasn't a live stream, but it was another video we'd made, all in the last 2 months in the context of the genocide, because we discussed, in one case, we discussed videos put out by the Palestinian resistance. And again, we do this in the context of news and analysis. What do these videos show? What are they telling us? Of course, we discuss also videos that come out from the Israeli army, although I don't think we've ever had a show censored because we showed something from the Israeli army. So we're constantly checking ourselves and saying, how far can we talk about this video? And we're going to be talking about some later in this program as well. I knew people were asking us in the comments, and the answer is yes, we are. But so that's the censorship on the bigger scale. And over the years, there have been reports about these tech companies, whether it's Google or Twitter or other ones, Facebook, Meta, that are in collusion with the US and Israeli governments to shape the narrative. Is that happening? Are we being too sensitive? Are we being too paranoid? What do you think?
You're not at all. I think one of the problem with things where you start thinking we're paranoid, is this a conspiracy theory? Is that they're not grand schemes. They're simply the natural effects of capital movement and education and investment and things that have been happening for years. So Israel has a very powerful army, and that army often has a lot of technologists in it, and there's a specific unit of it called the 8200 unit, where people are working in signal intelligence and that sort of thing. And an awful lot of these people become tech founders afterwards. And those tech founders, they go to Silicon Valley. Some of them become investors. There's an awful lot of investors who've been in the IDF, and there's an awful lot of investors who have Israeli citizenship, who in some cases have lived in Israel. So you can just look at it as the effects of capital. And counter to that, Gaza and the West Bank have been in locked down for 75 years. They started with nothing in 1948, and as a result, they have not been able to be part of the same conversation. There are very, very few Palestinian investors. There's very few Palestinian sympathetic investors. Even I've had conversations with Arab investors who are based in America and who are discriminated here on the basis of their name, on the basis of the color of their skin, and who are trying to succeed in this world as well. It's where they live. But it's nothing like particularly insidious or planned. I mean, this WhatsApp group is definitely planned, and the IDF is definitely planning things. But for the most part, it's systemic, and I look at it a lot like Black Lives Matter. That the issues of racism in America, it's not a couple of guys got together. I mean, not since 1776. Got together to keep them down. It's that there's a systemic thing where capital and where the people who benefit from the existing status quo continue to be part of that status quo and continue to advocate for the things that they believe in. And it's just the voices are disproportionately pro-Israeli.
Well, finally, Paul, what are you calling on people in tech to do right now? What can they do? What are the steps that people can take?
The most important thing is to create a situation where tech recognizes the humanity of Palestinians. To a lot of tech, Gaza is just a place that they've never seen and they're not aware of. They've perhaps never met a Palestinian, and they are not aware of what's happening. And so what I've started working on is just creating a movement towards the humanization of Palestinians, recognizing that there are two sides in this conflict, that everyone wants peace, and changing the narrative from being pro-Israel to one that is pro-peace, pro-ceasefire, and there's a lot of initiatives that I'm just facilitating, that people that are reaching out to me, but it's very much the center theme is recognizing the humanity of Palestinians.
Paul Biggar, CEO of 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and the founder of �circle.ci. We are so grateful to have you on today. And yeah, we're putting the link to your blog up on the screen now so people can go and read more of your work. We'd love to have you back on. Thank you so much, Paul.
Delighted to be part of the movement. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.